Before we begin, if you believe that love isn't loud but quiet, not dramatic but deeply human, then stay with me. And if stories about second chances, emotional honesty, and rebuilding what feels lost speak to you, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Because tonight's story isn't about betrayal. It isn't about scandal. It's about something far more fragile. The slow drift between people who still love each other, and the quiet moment that brings them back. The rain had softened into a gentle drizzle, tapping lightly against the windows of the Parker home, as if the sky itself was breathing more slowly. Outside, Seattle was wrapped in its familiar gray mist, streets gleaming under streetlights, rooftops shining under the thin sheen of water. Inside the house, though, something warmer was unfolding, not loud, not chaotic, but important. The living room felt heavier than usual, not because of silence, but because of presence. 3 people sat within a few feet of one another, each carrying thoughts that had gone unspoken for too long. Ethan sat in his favorite chair, elbows resting on his knees, hands clasped together tightly as though holding himself in place. His gaze lingered on the soft glow of the lamp beside him, but his mind was far from the room. It wandered through months of small misunderstandings, tired evenings, short conversations that used to be long ones. Laura sat on the couch nearby. Her coat had slipped from her shoulders and fallen to the floor unnoticed. Strands of damp hair clung lightly to her cheek from the rain outside. She looked exhausted, but not just from work. It was the exhaustion of someone who had been carrying too much silently. Maya sat near the edge of the couch, her hands folded carefully in her lap. She felt suspended in the space between closeness and caution. She wasn't uncomfortable, but she was aware. Aware of the history between Ethan and Laura. Aware of the tenderness in the air. Aware that tonight was not an ordinary evening. The silence that filled the room was not awkward. It was thick with meaning. For the first time in a long time, none of them were pretending to be fine. Ethan felt something shift inside his chest. The tension that had been sitting there for months didn't disappear, but it softened. It became honest. It felt like guilt mixed with relief, longing braided together with hope. Laura broke the silence first. "When did we stop being close?" she asked softly. Her voice was barely louder than the rain. Ethan swallowed. He had asked himself that same question in quiet moments over the past year. But hearing it spoken aloud made it impossible to ignore. "I don't know," he admitted. "I think we just got caught up in everything else. Work. Deadlines. Responsibilities. I guess we stopped noticing each other." Laura nodded slowly, staring at the floor as if the answer might be written there. "I thought I was loving you," she said. "In the ways I always have. I thought showing up, taking care of things, handling life, was enough. But maybe I stopped seeing what you needed." Maya watched them, feeling both relief and sadness. Relief because the truth was finally surfacing. Sadness because she could see how long the distance had been growing between them. She shifted slightly, thinking she should leave, give them privacy. But Laura turned to her instead. "Maya, do you know why I'm not angry?" Laura asked gently. Maya's lips trembled just slightly. "No," she said honestly. "I thought you would be." Laura gave a small, fragile smile. "Because when I walked in, I saw warmth," she said. "You two were comfortable. Honest. I haven't seen that between Ethan and me in a long time." Ethan felt guilt rush through him, sharp and immediate. Not because he had done anything wrong, but because he realized how much he had ignored. "Laura, She lifted her hand gently, stopping him. "I'm not blaming you," she said. "And I'm not blaming her. I just realized something tonight. I've been standing outside my own marriage, watching it from a distance." The words landed heavier than anger ever could. Maya's voice was barely a whisper. "I never meant to take your place." "You didn't," Laura replied quickly. "You reminded me of something important. What connection feels like." Ethan leaned forward, his voice soft but steady. "I love you, Laura. I always have. I didn't realize how far we'd drifted until tonight." Laura reached for his hand. Their fingers intertwined naturally, instinctively like muscle memory. The simple contact felt almost overwhelming. "I love you too," she said. "That hasn't changed. But love isn't enough if we stop being present. We have to rebuild. Slowly. Together." The silence that followed was different now. Softer. Safer. Maya remained seated, giving them space without physically leaving. She could feel the bond between them. 12 years of marriage, shared routines, shared struggles, shared dreams. Nothing about that history had disappeared. Do you remember the lake? Laura asked suddenly. Ethan smiled faintly. When we used to sit for hours just talking? Yes, she said. We didn't rush back then. We just existed together. I felt closest to you there, he admitted. I miss that, she whispered. I miss us. Maya leaned forward slightly. Maybe that's why tonight happened, she said. Not to break anything, but to remind you of what's still there. Laura looked at her carefully. You've always been important to me, she said. And maybe I needed someone outside of us to hold up a mirror. They talked for hours after that. Not about accusations. Not about blame. They spoke about exhaustion. About how work had swallowed evenings whole. About how routine had replaced romance. About how silence had felt easier than vulnerability. Laura admitted she had been overwhelmed, trying to do everything perfectly. Ethan confessed he had felt lonely but didn't want to add to her stress. Maya shared how moving back to Seattle had made her feel like she was both home and not home at the same time. The conversation wasn't polished. It stumbled at times. There were pauses. There were tears that nearly fell and laughter that surprised them. But it was real. Laura leaned back eventually, exhaling deeply. I didn't realize how much I needed this, she said. You both reminded me what love feels like when it's honest. Maya's eyes softened. Love isn't just between two people, she said carefully. It's what we create together. The honesty. The safety. The warmth. Ethan nodded slowly. I kept trying to fix things quietly, but I forgot that we don't fix alone. We fix together. Outside, the rain continued its steady rhythm. Inside, something had shifted. They hadn't solved everything. They hadn't magically erased months of distance. But they had done something more important. They had spoken. Laura turned to Maya again. I don't want to feel separate anymore, she said. I want to be part of whatever warmth I saw when I walked in. Not as an outsider. You never were, Maya said gently. Ethan looked at both of them, realizing how easily silence could have destroyed what honesty was now rebuilding. They shared old memories. School stories. Trips. Inside jokes. Moments that reminded them why they cared so deeply in the first place. The room, once heavy with unspoken tension, felt lighter now. Not perfect, but hopeful. Laura squeezed Ethan's hand. I promise to be present, she said. Even when it's hard. I promise too, he replied. Maya smiled softly. And I'll remind you both if you forget. They laughed quietly at that. Not because it was funny, but because it felt possible. The rain slowed even further, almost disappearing. The night felt calmer, as if the storm outside had mirrored the one inside. And both were easing at the same time. Laura leaned back, exhaustion and relief mingling in her expression. Tonight feels like a second chance, she said. It is, Ethan replied. Not just for their marriage. Not just for their friendship. But for the honesty they had forgotten how to share. By the time the final drops of rain touched the windows, the room felt different. The same furniture. The same walls. The same three people. But something subtle had changed. They weren't standing on opposite sides anymore. They were choosing to stand together. It wasn't dramatic. There was no shouting, no grand gesture, no cinematic moment. Just three people sitting in quiet understanding. Realizing that connection is rarely lost forever. Sometimes it just waits patiently, for someone brave enough to speak first. And on that rainy Seattle evening, when Laura chose not to walk away but to step closer instead, something fragile was saved. Not perfectly. Not instantly. But honestly. And sometimes, honesty is the beginning of everything.